I mean, the one thing we can all agree upon, I think, even if we have different views on the individual runners and riders, the BBC do look relatively ridiculous in this.
Big time.
They look ridiculous. If you're going to go hard, if you're going to go home, go hard as well. If you're not going to do that, then what was the point of bringing this on? I do think that the ultimate situation is the media have got hold of this. It's got a wildfire. And I think what was said on Friday was the most prevalent thing. We are going to get together and review. So if they expected, if there was a condition, and I don't know if there was, that Gary Lineker had to apologise, I don't blame him for not taking that opportunity to do so, because why should he apologise? He should take the consequences if his contract stopped him from doing it, but apologise for his own views, that's a different thing.
Incidentally, I want your honest take on this, and I really mean this. You and I joke around a lot in this show, but I'll ask you this seriously. If I had tweeted likening the government's language on migration to that of Nazi Germany, would you have backed me?
If
I'd been suspended?
Not sure. I'll tell you what I wouldn't have done is if your contractual position prohibited you categorically from making that sort of observations, I wouldn't have supported you in it. If your contractual position was silent and there was no obligation upon you to behave in a certain way, then I would have absolutely supported you.
I get that. I get it completely. And I think you're absolutely right. Because that is what it comes down to, Martin. What is allowable and what's not allowable in the terms of one's contract, in the terms of how you were hired by your employer. In this case,
and that's remarkable.
The BBC,
it's remarkable.
In my case, the boundaries at talkSPORT.
The boundaries were not known for this long,
and the boundaries were not
especially
known.
When a fella says
it's quite remarkable.
Especially when a fella says and makes it a matter of public record, Tim Davie, I came in October 2020 and I rewrote the impartiality rules. I mean, wow! You have to have a look at that fella and say, are you actually any good at your job, mate?
Well, that's right.
Because he made a public statement and it's on record. And if you go and look at him, he will tell you that in 2020, he went after the impartiality and neutrality position and went after it with a certain perspective because of people like Andrew Neil, because of people like Alan Sugar, that, by the way, were brought in production companies rather than BBC-owned products. But notwithstanding that, he went after that particular situation. And this is the outcome of
But he's making the right call now, though, isn't he? Bringing Gary back in.
But the likes of Sugar has got a contract, nonetheless, with the BBC.
No, they don't.
What are his terms of employment?
Fremantle Media and BBC Studios are two different things. They're buying in content. They're buying in content. Like they buy a film in it. If you've got an actor that's got a particular political persuasion outside of the film, you can't stop that because you've bought a film in.
I think we're agreed in one thing, Simon. The BBC has not come out of this at all well.
No, they haven't.
Now, Davey, the Director General, says he won't resign. But should he go?
Well, I think you've got to come to the point where there's some competence in question here. If you want to be told by governments about the idea that neutrality is we must remember that this is the broadcaster that's funded by the taxpayer, so there is a greater burden upon it than ITV or Channel 4 or any of these other ones, albeit Channel 4 is a situation that we can debate as well. But the point is this, is that Davey looks at this and the cornerstone, the BBC's in decline. It's got an identity crisis at this moment in time, doesn't know what it is and doesn't know where it's going, right? So that's not a win either. You've got the political football, which is the licence payers situation, and the fee paying situation, which is not under control either. And then you've got this. So I don't think any of this says that this guy is doing a particularly good job. He may be well rehearsed in the broadcasting world, but when you've got these kind of catastrophes on your doorstep and a broadcaster that's suffering from a crisis of identity, none of that. And then you have this. You have a situation where when you're pushed around by the government to suggest to the person that's saying things about a political policy that he shouldn't say that because his contract stipulates he shouldn't, and the BBC's position is neutrality, and then you have to find a mechanism to back down, which is what they're doing here. They're backing down. Everyone's dropping arms. This is an armistice. This is a 1914-18 middle of the war armistice. Everyone's kicking a football round. This is what this is, right? It's a ceasefire. And in that situation, what will happen is that they will reconstitute the clear... Because this idea around social media, the naivety of broadcasters, they're broadcasters. The one thing they should know about broadcasting is the rules that govern it. Social media has changed the landscape. They've changed everything. I mean, we could talk about Ofcom. Ofcom could be a restriction of freedom of speech because there's certain things that you and I cannot say on this platform.
Absolutely right.
Is Ofcom denying our freedom of speech? Because there's certain things we can't damn well say that we'd like to say, but Ofcom will permit us from saying.
So you know that, in other words, Simon, what you're saying is
the whole thing is flawed.
The whole thing is flawed, but you know the parameters.
Yeah.
Well, we don't, do we? And it's
we do,
but it's very difficult to police this, and that's been the issue.
It's not really.
Well, it's not really.
You sign a
Martin,
contract
because
you cannot. If you want to work for the BBC, which is your choice and your gift, and if you want to get £1.3 million a year to present the most iconic BBC show around that's probably lasted the test of time more than any other show, right? Here's your conditions. Oh, I don't want to sign that. Well, you're a very, very talented man. There's going to be an embarrassment of riches, including the Qataris that you vilified whilst working for them once upon a time. You can go and work for those sort of people if you want. It's available to you. But the BBC need to be best in class at what they're doing, and they're not. We know that they're not. And this looks bad for all of us in terms of the broadcasting world, because they've called on a fight, because they've been told to do so. They've been politically expedient. And what? It looks like, oh, it's the workers against the industry. It's not that. I'm not an employer going, well, keep the workers down. Not at all. No. But I am for people observing their obligations on both sides of the fence, the employer and the employee.
Simon's right, man, in that it's the look that the BBC has been given over the weekend. Tim Davie, the Director General, whose statement I've been reading out, reportedly flew in overnight from Washington to hold crisis talks with its best paid presenter, Gary Lineker, yesterday to resolve a dispute that left the corporation's weekend sports coverage severely disrupted. I mean, it was
20 minutes of minutes of match of the day, didn't we? You know, and we lost all
last night, match of the day 2 chopped to 15 minutes from its usual hour-long broadcast.
Flagship programmes all gone.
Ironically, the Saturday show got 500,000 more viewers.
I thought you might pick that up, Simon.
Maybe we don't need people like Martin Keown and Ian Wright and Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker. Maybe it could be done without them.
Well, maybe it'd be interesting, Jim, if you left this job, how many people would actually go in to support you?
Probably no one would support me, and the audience would double.
Maybe.
You know, you never know. But Martin, all joking aside, and we're not really joking actually, there are serious aspects to this. Lessons will be learned.
I hope so, Jim, yeah. I mean, one thing it showed, that the solidarity amongst the guys at the BBC, and Jim, just to say, everybody who didn't work that weekend, it was a heartfelt decision, because it's an iconic programme. The commentators, pundits, presenters, everyone loves it. They understand the responsibility of that show, because it's been many, many years now. It's a rolled out format.
Martin, we wouldn't expect you to say anything different, would we?
Jim, that is genuine. Genuine.
We're not going to be standing up and playing the BBC national anthem at the moment.
Jim, I'm afraid. Sorry, when you hear that music, you're doing the show. It is. Fantastic to be a part of.
When I hear that music coming on, I know about to listen to a litany of drivel from certain pundits, but that's a different discussion.
You wouldn't. When it comes to punditry,
is that I also feel that it's a very difficult.
You can't swim.
It's a difficult position to be in. I missed that. I'll get that in the rebounds. It's a difficult position to be in for people, because I think a significant proportion of people don't necessarily concur with Gary Lineker's views, don't necessarily concur with his right to be able to say
the principle of not being able,
but are terrified to row against the stream, because if they didn't, you'd have twits like Kevin Maguire turning around and calling people scabs in newspapers and God knows what else.
Well, Ian Dennis is actually coming in for a lot of stick, and what position he was put in. You know, it was a different.
But he's freedom of speech. Oh no,
he's a commentator, right?
Well, he's actually employed though by the BBC, so he's slightly different to the freelancers.
But that should not be happening. That Ian Dennis came in for a lot of stick and was called a scab over the weekend.
And it won't be happening next weekend, thankfully, because everybody's now going to be doing their shows. The 5 Live show will be.
Oh yeah, pieces broken out now, Martin. But try telling Ian Dennis that when he was at the height of a lot of criticism and bombardment on social media at the weekend.
Yeah,
thanks to nothing that he asked for, nothing.
No, but
there's nothing to deserve it.
Well, we hope that he's okay, and he's all going to be okay to work next weekend, because he's very good at his job, Jim. Like you are, Jim.
Oh, thanks. The fallout will go on. Of that, there is no doubt. What we want to do is hear from you this morning. 03717 223344. Pieces broken out between Lineker and the BBC. The BBC are telling us now that they're going to conduct a review. It will be led by an independent expert with a serious look, a particular focus on how it applies to freelancers outside news and current affairs when it comes to what people can and cannot say on social media. This cannot happen again, can it? Surely not. Where do you stand in this? Is it a win for Lineker? Do the top brass at the BBC rightly look red-faced this morning? Has peace broken out? Peace has broken out, but for how long? You can come on and tell us what you think. 03717 223344. Send us a message, 81089.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.